Hello, Ty Salvant of NOLA Homeschoolers. Thank you so much for joining me again for a classroom conversation. We're talking about homeschooling, distance learning. Tell the people hi. Say hello to the people.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah,
Hey guys, nice to see you again. And I look forward to kind of jumping in and helping out with our upper elementary age kids, right?
yeah, absolutely. We've done a couple of conversations. We've had a couple of conversations concerning our 1 to 4 year olds, our 5-ish to 7 year olds, and that early, the little ones, and the early elementary. And now, today, we're going to have a conversation, a short, sweet discussion about our second to fifth, sixth graders. And we found, and we're, of course, our goal is to help as many families as possible, specifically in this time when they are working to navigate this change in as a result of COVID-19. So there are some families that have already been homeschooling, and those families, of course, could benefit from this conversation as well. But we are reaching out, reaching for those that are maybe new to this whole concept and who need a little bit of guidance. And who better than Ty Salvant of NOLA Homeschoolers, an amazing organization that has worked for years. And you, of course, have homeschooled your own kids, all six of them. And so you bring that expertise to the table. So we are grateful for that, to have you in the classroom today. Can we start talking about a little bit this age, this second, third grade is when we in the school system traditionally begin to start testing. We begin to start addressing maybe some gaps that we're starting to see. I've heard a lot of parents say he was doing okay in second, and then that jump from second to third, we kind of saw these gaps start to show up. What can parents who are beginning to see gaps in their kids, what can they do to make the homeschooling or the distance learning experience a successful one?
So I think one of the first steps is to identify whether, like, how well they really were understanding those concepts in second grade,
Mm.
or if it was just kind of that they glossed over. I like to use this example with math, that if your child made A's in math on most of their tests, but they introduced fractions and your child didn't get it and they failed fractions, right? But they still made an A in math because everything else they made A's in. So they understood all of those things. So now that you get a grade higher and there's more fractions, well, they still don't understand them because they never understood them last year. Right.
Yes.
So there's certainly some online programs. I'm a huge fan of MobyMax, MobyMax.com, because I think
Mhm.
it's a good job of finding those holes and specifically letting you know what they are. So then you can address those and you can say, okay, is this what it is? Right. And so that's whether it's with math or reading. At this point, your child should be, fluently reading. Even if they're a little bit below level, it should be fluent by this time, right? And if not, this is the time to seek help. So this is where you would want to seek a reading specialist to be able to offer some other tips to you to really hone in and develop those reading skills, because they will be reading for the rest of their lives,
Yeah.
right? The rest of their educational career will rely on them learning how to input information through reading. So if they are not solid on that, like, that's something where it's worth the investment to seek more help.
Absolutely. Two things. The first thing, I definitely 100% concur. Parents that'll come to us, they'll say, well, he was a straight A student, and now, he's in fourth grade, he's in fifth grade, and he's flunking, he's failing. And I say, report card grades are not the only and best indicator, because
Mm-hmm.
of course, if all we've covered is what I know, then of course I'm going to be a straight A student. But if we cover something that I don't know, which would be Moby Max, which would be a diagnostic, an assessment to say, what should I know by fourth grade, by fifth grade? And then that's how we identify the gaps. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that is critical. The difference, and I talk about that in the book, Teach Your Own Kid, the difference between a report card grade, grades in a school, versus a diagnostic that says, this is what your baby should know by this time, and this is where he actually falls. So that is, that's critical for parents to understand. And then you said, if we're beginning to see issues and challenges in reading, we should look for a reading specialist. For our students who are doing distance learning, that seems like a pretty easy process. I can just reach out to the school and say, hey, this is what what I recognize, what I see in my child. How does a homeschool parent get in contact with a specialist, a reading specialist?
And so honestly, that's where you would reach out either to a homeschool group like NOLA Homeschoolers. You could go out there and say, hey guys, I'm looking for a reading specialist. Or there are lots of other support groups, and really where that'll end up coming from is there are families, there are people who either have this specialty, or I know like this one mom who has had multiple kids who were dyslexic. And so she became a specialist in teaching her kids, right? So this is certainly one of those areas where I say, you know, you show me a child with a new diagnosis and I'll show you a new expert in that field, right? Because again, there's no one motivated like this mom to end up finding ways to meet her kids' needs. But what I do want to make sure that we do is don't put undue pressure on people, right? So don't think, oh my gosh, if my kid needs, you know, all of this extra help, then I need to go become a specialist in all of these different areas, right? No, so there are certainly areas where you're like, hey, you know what? Again, I have multiple kids who are dyslexic, so I need to get a handle on this whole dyslexia and, you know, and read up and find some tips and some tricks and some workarounds. That's one thing. Two, hey, you know what? I have one child with this issue. It makes more sense for me to hire somebody to come in and do this piece, right?
Yeah. So outsourcing.
Absolutely.
And outsourcing does not mean that I have to have a whole budget set aside just to do that. We talked about this in the very first classroom conversation about the 1 to 4 year olds that, and even before then, I believe, where we were talking about bartering, where we were talking about finding other families who are experiencing similar things and beginning to make connections. Community is key. Community is key, even now, especially now that so many of us are in the same boat. So community is key, communicating with other families that are doing what you are attempting to do. We spoke about in all of the previous episodes. So if you missed any of our classroom conversations, you can definitely find that on teachyouroWnkid.com. And I know that Ty has also shared the episodes on the NOLA Homeschoolers Facebook page. So you can definitely go back and listen to those episodes where we discuss scheduling, the importance of scheduling, the importance of structure, the importance of environment, right? So is there anything outside of those things that we've talked about with the younger kids? Are there any other pieces that are specific to this age group, the 2nd to 5th, 6th graders?
So at this point, we need to do a couple of things. So we need to make sure that our kids are comfortable asking for help when they need it.
Yes.
Because so many kids sit in a classroom, watch a video, whether they're home, and they will say they get it and they will struggle with it and do their level best, but they just don't understand and they don't feel comfortable asking for help for whatever reason. So at this point, this is the time where you need to make sure, do whatever you can to reinforce the importance of asking for help when you need it. Right. So I would certainly make sure that we're addressing that. And this is the time where you want to start creating a good, you know, routine and schedule that your child can actually start to follow themselves. So by middle school is when I am saying, okay, so now we're working on becoming an independent learner, right?
Yes. Yes.
This is not, your education does not help mama. right? Like this is, you're not doing this for me. Well, I read 2 books for you. No, you're
No.
reading this for you, right?
Yeah.
So this elementary age, this is when you are working to help them start to create some good routines with, well, you know what? I noticed that I really don't like reading. And if I save it until the end, it just doesn't happen because I don't do it. Okay, so maybe you need to do your reading first. Or that, math is really hard for me. So what should, like, how can you help me with that, mom? Right. So if math is really hard, let's do math when you're at your best, right? When you find that you're able to concentrate. And so maybe that's after, a good healthy snack, and maybe after a run, right? So let's figure out the best time for you to be able to tackle that subject.
And then to piggyback on that piece, math, if math is as a child's most difficult subject, then communicating, saying, well, mom's working from home as well, and I've got other kids that I'm working with as well. To avoid becoming frustrated, make sure we are setting aside a time when I am available to help you with your math. Instead of saying, hey, mom, I'm on math now and I need help. And mom is like, well, I'm in the middle of a virtual call myself. And then we've got frustration, right?
Mm-hmm.
So communicating that, knowing and teaching your child how to communicate and say, okay, mom, if it's okay, I want to do math at, 10 o'clock every day, or can I let you know maybe an hour ahead of time when I'm heading into math? Just that communication piece, because now we are teaching how to become independent thinkers, independent learners, because they're going to need that for middle school. They're going to need that as they go into high school. So that's a really good point, is to say, let's talk about this and let's begin to work on that piece. The other thing that I'm wondering is the social aspect for these kids. These kids are second maybe still, but they're starting to get a little bit older and they're starting to desire a different social climate. Or so what is it that we can do to make sure that they are getting what they need, our 2nd to 5th, 6th graders, socially during this time that they're learning at home?
Right. So what I would recommend for kids in this age group, especially those who are, say, shifting from a traditional school to homeschooling, right, is to set up regular play dates with their friends from school so they don't end up losing those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
And same thing, if you're doing a virtual program, I would certainly highly encourage the same thing. And then find out, again, all of this, right, you're finding out what your child needs, right? So there are some kids who are going to thrive in group settings and team sports, and that's their jam, right? So then you need to look for opportunities to do that. And whether that's through dance classes or the choir or CYO, whatever it is, find opportunities for your kids to connect and be involved and engaged with other kids. For your kids who prefer a solo activity, then look for something that they can end up doing, and even it could still be sports, whether it's tennis or swimming or golf, something that doesn't rely on somebody else for them to do to engage. And you can find, it doesn't matter what activity your child is into, that there are opportunities to do that in group with other people if your child, thrives that way, or by themselves. So they could take an art class with several kids versus having a private lesson to still develop this love that they have for art in a way that's comfortable for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Could this also be looked at as an opportunity to begin to explore things like second languages and STEM programs, and just begin to even virtually giving the option to say, this is a great time, right, to begin to look at some of the things that maybe you weren't involved in, but maybe you want to kind of get involved in as we move forward. This could be that time. And talk a little bit about the importance of field trips.
So field trips are a great way to, honestly, for the whole family, right? I mean, the parents love getting out and engaging with each other.
Yeah.
As much as the kids enjoy learning things and putting it all together. So if you've done this, geography lesson on, and you're doing geography and history of like Louisiana. So that's a great time to go to the Chalmette battlefield, to all of our museums in the French Quarter, whether it's the Cabildo, right? And really start to put those pieces together so the things that your child read in that book or saw in that video, they're actually seeing in real life and saying, oh my gosh, like this is, that, what they made slaves wear, or this is I remember went on this field trip to the pharmacy museum, and it was so fascinating to see from hundreds of years ago of things that they ended up creating, or like old spectacles, right? So it really is a great way to put it all together, still learning, right? There are still some things that you were learning during this time.
Yes.
But in a social way that provides for, again, a chance to get together with other kids and connect that way, while having a fun outing.
Absolutely. And a caveat to that would be, of course, if these places are not open for, because of the pandemic, many of them also provide virtual options. So it's the next best thing. If you can't, get into those buildings or get onto those the battlefield or those museums, then many of them are now providing those virtual options. So that'll be good. As we wrap up this conversation, let's shift a little bit to the parent. Let's shift a little bit to our parents, and many of them need support. They need support. So can we help our parents know where to go and what maybe they could be doing to make sure that they are in a space that makes it conducive for their kids who are now being schooled at home?
And same thing, that is going to be as, individualized it is with our kids, right? Because as mom or dad, if you're more of an introvert or extrovert, right? And so that hey, if you just had an hour a day to hit the gym, you're good. Right? That if you had some other families to talk to about the issues that you're having, you're good. So whether that's setting up a, neighborhood dinner once a week, right? Or we're all going to meet at the park on Saturday, and the parents get together and have a chance to talk, and the kids can get together and, eat lunch and play, again, in a way where we feel comfortable and feel like it's safe, then that certainly is what you need to do. With the, our Facebook group, it really does provide an outlet for parents to come in and post and share about their, concerns or successes, right? Just like, we talk about this like, oh, well, there were these problems we had to overcome, but sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this kid just did this, and this. And you want somebody to share who understands.
Yes.
Right? My kid, he is now reading. And for a parent who is walking that with you to be like, oh my gosh, girl, high five, right? Rocked it. Right. So we certainly need to do that. And this actually kind of dovetails into one of the other areas I was going to talk about, is that this is a perfect time to start incorporating those life skills in your child, whether it's chores, right? Yes. Because there is nothing worse to me than a parent, and I will say mom, because it's typically mom who, it just where the burden is, right? And so it's typically who's having to make sure that, all of the food is cooked and the dishes are done and the laundry is done and the floors are swept and the trash is out, and like the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Right. So this upper elementary age is a great time to start incorporating chores as a part of your education. Right. So it was very important to me that my kids understood how to run a house. So even before this point, they had chores that were age appropriate. And if you're not sure, I know that we have a list in our Facebook group, and I'll make sure that I put another one on our Facebook page, just a couple of ideas on age appropriate chores, right? But this
Absolutely.
is you, because think about it. If you ended up having the kids to assist with the things that need to be done, that there is less on your plate that you need to do before you can kind of turn yourself off at the end of the night, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ty, that's a mouthful. That is a mouthful. It's actually, and I'm seeing it in action. This is actually how we run our school. Each of our students has a job. Even if that is, we're so small, even if that means you are the one who makes sure that the lights are off when we leave the room. Even if you're the one who makes sure that the timer is set when it's time for us to transition. And that way, the adults in the room, the teachers, we are helping you to develop that independence, that responsibility, but we are also taking a load off of ourselves. If I'm running around making sure the lights are off and making sure the timer is set, those are things that we can give to our kids to help to, we're not gonna die if the timer is not set. We're not gonna die if the light is off, is left on. However, it makes life a little bit easier when that's one less thing that I have to check off of my list of so many things as a parent that I am working to do. So that in and of itself, I think is worth just this conversation, that nugget of saying, this is the age, y'all, that we can start teaching them how to help us, how to load, how to get some of the pressure off of us so we can focus on the truly important stuff, which is sure they understand the material, making sure we're getting the help for them that they need. So thank you so much for that tidbit. Where can folks find you, Ty? Where can they find you if they want to hear more?
Absolutely. So come to NOLA Homeschoolers. Come to our Facebook page. There are a ton of resources there, whether it's how to homeschool, if that's where where you are, or if it's just extracurricular like online programs that you're looking for. We have lists of those as well. Find us on Facebook. So we have a Facebook page and a private Facebook group. Feel free to, join and follow both of those. And you can always reach me if you want to send an email to connect@NOLAHomeschoolers.com. I get those, and I will be there to assist.
Awesome, awesome. And if you are looking for this video, if somebody shared it with you and you're like, oh, I remember, go to teachyouroWnkid.com as well. TeachyouroWnkid.com, and all of the conversations we've had, it's there. It's also on YouTube, on our Teach Your Own Kid YouTube page. So thank you once again, Ty. Ty, we're going to be back because we've still got to talk about our middle schoolers, the true middle schoolers, our junior high, as well as the high schoolers, right?
Yes.
That's going to be a good conversation. Thank you again, Ty, for joining me in this classroom conversation. Parents, teach your own kid. This is where we are. Thank you, Ty.
You're welcome.